Welcome back to Flying Upstream, the podcast that explores bold voices and unconventional lives. Today's guest is a storyteller whose life has spanned stages, continents, and transformations. Judge Kemp is a writer, poet, blogger, and community advocate currently based in Portland, Oregon. A former performer and lifelong explorer, Judge has turned personal evolution into powerful poetry that reflects themes of love, identity, resilience, and what it means to live a creative life. What makes Judge's story so compelling isn't just the career shifts or the global adventures, it's his honesty. From growing up in a military family to discovering the arts as a teen to losing the ability to perform and finding a new voice through writing, Judge's journey is a lesson in reinvention and the courage to a lesson in reinvention and the courage it takes to keep showing up with your heart open. His work reminds us that storytelling isn't just art, it's survival, connection, and legacy. Judge, welcome to Flying Upstream.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So let's start at the beginning. You were born into a military family and moved often as a child. What kind of impact did that have? That constant change, and how did it impact your sense of self growing up?
Yeah, for me, it was a great opportunity just to see different places. My father, Judge Senior, was in the military, the Army. And so as we moved around, we were introduced constantly to new places, new faces, and that somewhat transient lifestyle, um, came in handy as an older adult who loves to travel and meet new people. And I think having that opportunity at such a young age gave me the ability just to adapt quickly to change.
And, I moved around a lot as a child, not in a military family, just parents who had other reasons. But it is really hard. It takes a toll, and as much as it does create resilience to adapt to new environments quickly, put yourself out there, try to make friends, it's really stressful too. And I found that as an adult, I have some lingering things that have stayed with me that are really strange. Like, I have this just obsession with keeping boxes because I'm like, "You
Mhm.
never know when we have to move." And my
Right.
husband's like, "We're gonna know when we have to move." But it's like these strange things that just stick with you over time. Okay, so once you were in high school, I know that you found a love for theater, dance, international connection. What can you share about those early creative experiences, and what did it teach you that kept with you for life?
Oh, my love for international travel it all started there. I was the club president of the American Field Service for my high school in San Diego, Mount Carmel High School. Go Sun Devils. And we had exchange students in from Europe, from Mexico City, from Norway, a variety of places, and that really intrigued me about Europe specifically. And good friends of mine were host families, and so I got a chance to spend a lot of quality time with these people, and it just really opened my eyes to the rest of the world. And so, as an older adult, when I had the opportunity to travel abroad, it really changed my life, I can say, to the point where my geography has gotten better, that's for sure. And I also now speak multiple languages, which is something
Wow.
that, you know, Dutch is not an easy language, let me tell you, but it's in my head now, and I love to surprise people with the fact that I speak more than one language. And yeah.
That's incredible. That's incredible. So you had all these opportunities that maybe a typical American wouldn't have, and you kinda kept that going even throughout your 20s, right? Is that right? Kind of
Yeah,
the
yeah.
creative spark. Tell us a bit about that.
So in my 20s, my late 20s, I had the opportunity of, first of all, discovering my footing as a dancer. And in doing that, I was able to um, perform and I actually was a professional dancer for a number of years at a theme park in a show called City Streets. And there I got a chance to meet other people from all over the world that also invited me to visit them abroad. So, the opportunities that presented themselves later in life really helped solidify my love for travel. And so performing also gave me an opportunity to stretch my legs, uh, be in the public eye as an artist, as an entertainer, and those opportunities really were. Um, they all started in high school. All those opportunities.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And I so appreciate that you had this chance to kind of live that dream, just to experience, to travel, to dance, perform, experience being in the spotlight, as you said, which
Yeah,
is pretty significant. Many people are afraid to be in the spotlight, not only because it's scary to have attention on you, so much attention, but it means you have to perform. People are can be really afraid of being who they are, right?
true, true.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So you're living the dream at this point, and then everything shifted. Tell us about what experience was like for you with memory loss that disrupted your career.
Yeah, it was so strange to me. I was living in LA at the time. I decided to move from San Diego to LA to kind of pursue my more creative endeavors in dance and acting. And it was like someone hit a light switch, and I just lost my ability to my short-term memory to learn lines quickly or dance steps, and it was extremely frustrating to me. Um, the luck that I did have at the time was I was doing a little modeling on the side, and that actually helped to supplement my income even more, doing some bridal fashion shows as well as some other print work that presented itself at the time. But unfortunately, I still have a really bad memory when it comes to trying to remember just some of the basic details like numbers. But I've managed to, luckily through the tools of technology, that's helped. But it's still a bit of a strange thing. I don't understand why it happened. I can honestly say it wasn't drugs. Um, some people said, "Well, maybe it's it's a drug thing." I'm like, no, no, not my style. But yeah, it's just kind of strange how that happened. But I took that as an opportunity to continue to grow or find other ways to still be creative. And the modeling actually opened that door to that opportunity.
Mm. So I have to imagine you were feeling angry, confused, sad, like so much had just changed in an instant. And yet you were still finding a way to move forward with life, right? You're like, okay, if performing is just not going to work for me in the way that it used to, let me pursue modeling and let me kind of keep going with that. And I believe after that, you traveled back to Europe and moved to
Yes.
Holland, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Do you feel
Yeah.
like that adventure reshaped your perspective on life and identity?
It really did. It gave me the opportunity to finally be be who I am, being a gay male, live my truth. It gave me the opportunity to explore the parts of the world. It provided an opportunity to experience a long-term relationship for the first time. Um, that opportunity living abroad just really opened my eyes to so many things that I normally would not have had. That's not to say I would not have had a relationship, a long-term relationship in the States, but the opportunity that was presented to me to travel and to explore places, I think would not have happened had I remained in the States.
Hmm. Yeah. And I truly believe everything happens for a reason, even though it's so frustrating to hear that, and I say this to myself too, is because we have things happen in life that are less than ideal to say the least. And in that moment, it somehow does open these doors that we never would have expected, right? Like if you hadn't
Absolutely.
this hadn't happened to you, you might still be performing at the same show, right? Maybe you never would have pursued modeling more or traveled to Europe and Holland and gone down that path. So it is interesting how these things create twists and turns in our life. And in more recent years, you found your voice again through writing. And
Yes.
I'm curious to know, after all that had happened to you at this point, what drew you to poetry in particular? And do you think poetry helped you process your story?
It's interesting. Poetry, first of all, I never was interested in it at all as a form of creative writing. Before the pandemic, um, and what happened was I was during the pandemic. I was experiencing some really horrific and graphic nightmares to the point I would be screaming, and just my poor partner, bless his heart, he had to handle this um, to the point where I had to sleep in the other room sometimes because it was so bad. And at the same time, a former publisher friend, Jana Lopez, she started a an online writing course and suggested that I participate. And I thought, but I'm not a writer. And to that, I had written a couple of things that had been picked up by Huffington Post, but I still never considered myself a writer. And fast forward, I do sign up for the virtual writing class. My nightmares disappeared. So somehow
Oh.
being able to focus on something at that time where there was so much misinformation going around, I was able to find an outlet for all of that extra fluff and stuff in my head that was really making my life miserable. Um, and because of that, we started writing, different types of writing, and we started to pursue poetry as our next subject. And honestly, I checked out. I think my writing pals would say I like crossed my arms, and I really just disconnected because poetry did not resonate with me, at least at the time. And so when I finally got over myself, uh, I was open to the invitation of writing poetry. I would experiment with words, experiment with repetition, um, experiment with just a variety of styles of poetry, and it finally clicked. And so uh, months go by, I'm writing poetry, and my writing instructor, Jana Lopez, she says, "So now what are you going to do?" And I'm like, "Well, what do you mean?" "Well, you've got all of this beautiful work. What are you going to do with it? Have you ever thought about writing a book?" I'm like, "Me? Write a book?" And so she also hosted several retreats, and there was one in Portland here, close to where I live at the time. And I decided, you know what, I'm just going to do this. I'm going to, see what this is all about. I'm going to do this retreat. And at the end of the retreat, it was myself and about five other ladies, and she had asked us, "What do we want to do next?" And I said, "You know what? I'm going to write a book, and I want it to come out next year." And so I think it was in October when we had this retreat. And since I vocalized it, I made it real. Now the work had to happen. I had to make this book happen. And 6 months, I think it was probably a little more than 6 months later, my book came out, Live, Love, Leo. It's a beautiful book of images with my words. And I did it, with a lot of help from my writing, mentor Jana Lopez, and support from my partner. Um, I made it happen, and I'm extremely proud of this book. Um, it is something that I know anyone who gets a hold of it will be happy with. It's more than just a book of poetry. There's some wonderful images, and I think people will get an opportunity to see who I am, or at least, when I'm gone, the book will still be here, and they can say, oh yeah, I really like this guy, Judge Kemp. That was a beautiful collection of poetry he wrote. Um, so yeah, that's where it all came from. Seriously, in a nutshell. So I guess you could say I'm a pandemic poet. That's where it all happened.
Well, that is how things happen, is like we don't when you were, 10 years old, were you like, I'm gonna be a poet? No, right? When I was 10
No.
years old, was I like, I'm gonna be a podcast host? No. It's just not how life happens. And so I so appreciate your story because it came from a truly or organic and authentic beginnings, humble beginnings, right? And you had
Absolutely.
someone giving you the little nudge, but really it was you. You had to make that decision to
Absolutely.
invest in yourself and to really put the effort and the time into this. And I just love that. That's so beautiful because we talk to so many people who have trauma happen in their lives and they could have stopped at any point. They could have just gone to bed for the next 10 years and said, this life is not for me. But you didn't, right? You got back up, you traveled, you
Hmm.
decided to start writing, you got published in the Huffington Post. Like that in itself is amazing. And then you wrote a book. Like amazing, And that
Thank
is
you.
like that I think is like the true vibe and the true spirit of what it means to have an unconventional life. It's that you're not just falling down when life throws you a hard ball and hits you in the face, right? You get back up and you say, "Hey, that didn't work. I'm going to try something different." And you keep going. You build up that resilience. So,
Keep moving forward. That's what I
moving
believe
forward.
in. Keep
Absolutely.
moving forward.
Now, one of the things that you write about with such honesty is being an older gay man, someone
Hmm.
without children, but rich in lived experience. What has inspired you to focus on this?
You know, I think what it is, because I'm an older gay man, and I don't have any kids. So, I just want, when I'm gone, I want some part of me to linger. And, my poetry is one way of leaving a lasting legacy behind. I'm extremely fortunate that the Multnomah County Library here in Portland, Oregon has ordered a few copies of my book for their library. So I'm very
Wow.
happy and quite honored. It's going to be, there's a Black history section in one of the branches here in North Portland. And so one of the copies will be there on permanent display as part of their um, Pacific Northwest Black history collection, or something similar to that. So I'm very happy and very pleased and honored to have the Multnomah County Library support me this way.
Wow. That's such an honor. That's really an honor. And to have it be in your own community is really special too. I always think that um, maybe I can't change the world. I can't change law necessarily, but if
Hmm.
I can make a difference to just one person in my world, in my community, in my family, then I can die happy. That's how I always feel. So,
Absolutely, absolutely.
yeah.
I feel the same way. I can't change the way people are, but maybe there's some way within my words. I tell stories with my words, so maybe there's something there that will turn on a light bulb of an idea and allow that person to change and chart a new course, create a new destiny for themselves.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. I have really enjoyed our conversation today, Judge, and we are winding down. So I've got one last question for you.
Sure.
And we always like to end on kind of an inspirational note. So our question is, if someone were to discover one of your poems long after you're gone, what do you hope they would feel or understand about you?
That's a really good question. And I alluded to it partially already as a living legacy. That's what I want people to discover about me with my words. I want them to discover that I cared about community. I cared about my friends. I cared about my partner, my husband. I cared about my family. All of those things, I think, when a person um, reads my first book, there'll be more. Uh, reads my book will realize that this person cared, and um, I think that's a good thing to leave behind, knowing that I did a good thing. You know, I was a person that cared for my community. Um, so yeah, I think that would be what someone would think about me.
That's beautiful. And I know I would think that absolutely. So just beautiful. Well, thank you, Judge, for sharing your life, your art, and your truth with us today. Your story reminds us that even though loss and change happen, the creative spirit finds new forms and that words can build bridges across generations. To our listeners, don't forget you can get $5 off Judge's book, Live, Love, Leo, using the code FLYUP at judgekemp.com. The offer is valid through September 19th, so don't wait. And if you know someone who would benefit from hearing this episode, please send it to them. Stories like this are meant to be shared. Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and of course,